Hello, a very warm good morning to all of you and welcome to Unacademy. Welcome to today's The Hindu newspaper analysis, where we take a look at the Delhi edition of today's newspaper, decipher the important articles which have appeared in the newspaper, and analyze what is relevant for the examination and declutter the entire concepts. So today we are going to discuss a host of different topics covering from GS paper 1 to GS paper 4 in some aspect or the other, both for the relevance in the mains as well as in the prelims examination. But before we proceed ahead with the topics that we are going to discuss today, an announcement regarding your prelims preparation. As the prelims is approaching close by, the importance of practice with the help of questions becomes much more prominent. So, as we have been doing so, today we are going to have a live session for art and culture at 7:30 p.m. on YouTube. Join us live and simplify art and culture and understand the important areas in art and culture which have to be studied with the help of questions. That will be the best form of revision. Then at 6 p.m. we are going to have a live session with the help of MCQs for the static portion of international relations. So, in both these sessions, do join us and do try to attempt as many questions as possible and further streamline your preparation. 6 p.m. on the app for the live session for IR and at 7:30 p.m. on YouTube for the live session on art and culture. Now, having said that, let us take a look at the topics that we are going to discuss today. So today in total we are going to have a discussion of around 8 different topics important for various perspectives of prelims as well as the mains examination. So first of all, we are going to discuss the topic which has appeared in the editorial page, that is turmoil and test. While this is largely around the political turmoil which has been unraveling in the region of Haryana, in the state of Haryana, we are going to analyze that a bit. But more importantly, we are going to understand what are the implications of such turmoils and why is it that it is very important for the governor to take a proactive stance at this point of time, but not an overactive or a kind of an overreach. So that is something that we are going to take a look at what is going behind the scenes. Then this is relevant for your GS paper 2. Then after that, an AI-infused world needs matching cybersecurity. The threats posed by AI have been rising day after day, more number of phishing malware attacks than ever before. And that is why the world needs to adapt to that. How does the world do that and how can the world do that? So that is relevant for your GS paper 3. This is also something which has appeared in the editorial page. Then reservation within constitutional bounds. As the electoral season is progressing, there have been increased number of conversations about what should be the reservation quota, should there be reservation based on religion or not. So this entire concept about it, the concept of affirmative action, and does it allow a reservation to be provided on the basis of religion, etc. or not? What the article has talked about, that is what we are going to discuss. We are going to keep it strictly apolitical, without any particular political bias as is required by the examination. So this is also relevant for your GS paper 2. Then fear mongering of vaccines. Ever since there has been a finding that Covishield has got some amount of side effects in certain rare cases, there has been an increased backlash from the people who don't trust the vaccine. So vaccine hesitancy is again on the rise. So what do we do? What should be the way going forward? So this is again which has appeared in the science section, relevant for your GS paper 3. Now, red and blue corner notices by Interpol, what they are, what is the difference between them, that is relevant for the prelims. Padma awards have been announced. Aircraft carrier Fujian has been launched by China. So what is the technology? What is this AMALS technology as compared to the STOBAR technology that India uses, and why this particular aircraft carrier is a game changer in the region of Indo-Pacific? And could bird flu be the next pandemic? That is again something we will analyze. So these are the topics that we are going to discuss. Without further ado, let us straight away move into the first topic of the day. And the first topic is turmoil and test. Now, to set the context about it, this topic and this particular article talks about the political turmoil and the political events which are unfolding in the state of Haryana. Now, Haryana State Assembly basically is a 90-member state assembly. So first of all, let us understand the arithmetic behind it. What is going on? So that you get an idea, and then we will talk about what the governor should do and why the governor should do a particular thing or take a proactive stance. So let us understand the arithmetic behind it. So when we talk about the strength of the assembly, strength is 90 MLAs. So the majority mark is above 45. If any particular political party has got above more than 45 seats, you can be in power. Now, what was the earlier ruling combination? Earlier ruling coalition that was present, that was with the Bharatiya Janata Party plus JJP. So that was the earlier ruling coalition. BJP had 41 MLAs, JJP had around 10 MLAs. Along with support of the independents, this was a comfortable majority, and they were ruling the state. Now, what happened a few months back was basically JJP and BJP, they parted ways. They split. So the coalition broke. Now, immediately after that, the Indian National Congress, which had 30 MLAs of its own in the assembly, it moved the no confidence motion. And the BJP had to carry out a floor test in order to prove its majority. So at that point of time, when the no confidence motion was passed a couple of months back, BJP basically had 41 MLAs, right? 6 independents provided the support to the government, and 1 MLA from HLP, Haryana Lok Hit Party, also extended his support. So in total, again, you had how many? You basically had 48. Again, passed the majority mark. So the no confidence motion could not be successful, and the government could prove its majority. So what has changed in these 2 months? A new chief minister has been appointed there, Mr. Nayab Singh Saini. Now, here, when the new chief minister has taken office and as the work is progressing or whatever, basically, JJP has not only parted ways, but amongst these 6 independents who had lent their support, 3 out of them have decided to move away. So that puts the number firmly back around 45. So again, it is a risky territory. And to add on to the fact that the previous chief minister, Mr. Manohar Lal Khattar, along with one of his other colleagues, they have resigned from the Legislative Assembly in order to run for the Lok Sabha, in order to contest for the Lok Sabha seats. So now, the effective strength of the assembly in itself has come down to 88. So that is where the opposition is now hopeful that if under these conditions, if a no confidence motion is passed, then, or if a no confidence motion is carried out, then the government can be brought down. But here the problem lies in the fact that within 6 months, you cannot have a rerun of the no confidence motion. There has to be a gap of around 6 months. So that is why INC, or Indian National Congress, is reluctant to bring forward the no confidence motion now, right? Because it is not allowed as per the rules and the procedures. So the arithmetic is a bit dicey, but here lies the crux where it is very pertinent for the governor to start taking proactive measures. Why? Because not only have these 3 independent MLAs backed out, but out of these 10, the JJP, headed by Dushyant Chautala, who was earlier supporting, now in opposition, out of these 10, 3 have rebelled. 3 have rebelled and they want to support the government. Under the anti-defection law, maybe these 3 will be disqualified. Ideally, they will be disqualified because they are going against the party whip and the party wishes. So now, what is the effective strength of the Legislative Assembly? Out of 88, now if you remove 3 as well, the effective strength is limited to how much? 85? Isn't it? So the majority mark should be how much? 43. Now, out of this 41 MLAs that BJP had, Manohar Lal Khattar actually resigned from the Legislative Assembly, so this number has also come down by 1. But still, including this one, including the other 3, BJP is crossing that. So that is why the Chief Minister is confident enough that even after all these permutation, combinations, additions and subtractions, we still have a comfortable majority where 40 plus 1 plus 3 still carries them to 44, which is a comfortable majority. Now, here the question is not whether the BJP government is able to maintain its majority or whether the Congress is able to pass the no confidence motion or not. That is not the issue at hand. This happens in electoral democracy. This has been happening in the state and the central elections from time to time. What we have to focus here is on the fact that what it can lead to. So, when you have this level of uncertainty which prevails, that one particular MLA or 2 MLAs, if they splinter away from a group, if they, let's suppose, separate away from a group, that can make all the difference between a government staying in power or the government being removed from power. So when you have this kind of a situation, lucrative deals, very attractive deals, they start floating by. Horse trading, under the table exchanges of benefits and favors, that is something which becomes predominant. And due to those corrupt practices, eventually you will have independents who are lured by this particular political party also, that political party also. You will have the smaller parties also given that lure that, okay, if let's suppose 4 people are disqualified, the strength of the assembly will further come down, the majority requirement will be further lower. Isn't it? Now, that is where the push and pull at the legislator level can be dangerous. So that is something which the article talks about, is the fact that it warrants an action from the side of the governor. The governor, ideally, as per the article also, the governor should call for a majority test. The governor can do that. Now, whenever the governor senses that there is a kind of instability, there can be a probability of horse trading, he should call for, he or her, they should call for a kind of a floor test, a majority test. Because we have seen earlier also, Supreme Court in its multiple observations has noticed that if this uncertainty is not resolved at the earliest, Supreme Court in certain cases has basically gone out of its way in order to initiate certain actions. So here we will analyze it in certain role. So, governor's stance has to be calling for a majority test or a floor test. Now, when you have the governor initiating a floor test or calling for a floor test, there also arguments lie on both sides of the spectrum. Let us analyze that. First of all, what is the advantage or the benefit of calling a floor test as of now? First things, it will get rid of the uncertainty which is prevailing in the state government's action as of now. As of now, the entire attention of the state machinery would be to do what? to ensure that they have the majority, to ensure that the majority is intact. So what about the administration? What about the governance? That will definitely take a back seat, isn't it? So to remove, to ensure administrative efficiency, so for that administrative efficiency, this particular doldrum or this particular uncertain situation needs to be tackled with. Secondly, horse trading and corrupt practices can be curbed. Horse trading means what? You give a large amount of money to any particular individual to switch sides or to vote accordingly. Practices can be stopped. Right? These are the clear-cut benefits. And that calls for the governor's action. Floor test. Just call for a floor test. But simultaneously, there is an argument which can be built up against this also. If, let's suppose, any individual legislator, for example, in any particular state, consider a state of Jharkhand. Why I have considered the state of Jharkhand? Because Jharkhand also, given the number of seats that it has, around 81, also faces this conundrum that one MLA has resigned, so now the government is at risk. So this happens with the smaller legislatures across the country. So if immediately after every time within a couple of months of no confidence motion being defeated, if the governor calls for a floor test again, that is hardly a confidence building measure in the government. And that can sometimes, if the governor uses this stance, think about the weaponization of this stance if, let's suppose, there is a non-favorable government at the state or the center and they don't look eye to eye, which sadly the polarization of today's world's politics is leading to. So that is where it can eventually lead to a kind of overreach. Overreach not in terms of what is the power of the governor. Power of the governor is due that he or she can call for a floor test. But then, should they do it immediately after, around 1.5 months after a no confidence motion has been passed? So that means it can be used as a precedent to destabilize the governments. And governments particularly who have a thin majority. Not every time any particular elected government will have a full term or a rather 2/3 majority. So many of the times they simply have a thin majority, a wafer thin majority. So in that case, if the governor keeps on harping on this, it can be used against it also. But in the larger overall wisdom, the governor should call for a floor test in order to get rid of these particular debacles and these particular drawbacks, and also to ensure that the political class of the state receives the message that as soon as the situation gets dicey, let's suppose in a 200-member assembly, if let's suppose a particular political party has 150 seats, even if 4 or 5 or 10 of them go here or there, hardly makes a difference. But if let's suppose out of 100-member assembly, if a political party has got 51, even a slight movement here and there can topple the government. So once the governor takes a solid stance that, look, whenever this situation will arise, we will call for a floor test, let that be set as a precedent, then automatically an increased amount of accountability and transparency, which is very much required in the political setup, will come to the fore. So that is what this entire article is about. That is what the turmoil in the Haryana politics is going on. As of now, both the political parties are basically concentrating in the elections, the Lok Sabha elections which are to be conducted, but immediately after the elections, expect this issue to flare up and to pick up. And you can expect few of the litigations to be filed up in the court as well. So follow this news thread. It is going to be very entertaining and very interesting, to say the least. Now, coming to the portion of polity, because we are discussing the portion of polity, and before moving to the second article, how to conquer polity, how to cover polity in greater detail. This is where you cannot afford many mistakes, right? Because the candidates don't do so. So how to ace polity and ensure that you are the best candidate out there? You have the opportunity to attend the live workshop from one of the best educators out there. So do attend the live workshop on 11th May, that is tomorrow at 8 p.m. The live workshop about how to approach polity for CSE Prelims and Mains for the next year. The workshop will be conducted by Sarmad Sir. Do attend that, gauge an idea about the materials that you have to refer to, how you have to declutter the topics, do we have to go into the facts or the details, how do we approach the subject, how do we prepare notes if at all. So do attend this workshop live and improve your understanding about the subject. Now, then coming to the second article. An AI-infused world needs matching cybersecurity. So, this article is about the growing power of artificial intelligence, in particular generative artificial intelligence. Now AI is all around us nowadays, from the mobile phones that you operate to certain apps to the systems. Everywhere AI is making an increased amount of inroads. Now AI largely is being talked about in negative connotation nowadays, that it will replace jobs, it will cause this kind of economic damage, etc. But the benefits are also there. AI, if you take a look at it, typically mankind or the human race has spent decades in order to develop this artificial intelligence. And now that the artificial intelligence is at the cusp of it, we are only able to look at the bad aspects. So here, first of all, let us understand, when we talk about AI, it has got some benefits also and some drawbacks also. Benefits in the sense that in many areas, for example, medicine, AI can be of significant help. Diagnostics, AI can be of significant help. Let's suppose analysis of minerals, rainfall pattern, crop distribution, welfare schemes, whether they are reaching the population or not, there also AI can be of help. So AI, the benefit of it moves from the portion of our day-to-day life, from the governance issues, to the aspect dealing with, let's suppose, defense, trade, etc. So the benefits are huge. You will have significant amount of economic benefits. Then in diagnostics, then after that governance, welfare schemes, are they reaching the grassroots or not, defense tech, space tech or space exploration, right? So the benefits are huge. It is expected that AI alone, as the article also highlights, that AI alone has the potential to change the global economy by a tune of $7 to $10 trillion. Think about it. That is the impact that this particular intelligence can have. But ever since AI has become more prominent, there has been an exponential increase in the amount of phishing attacks, ransomware attacks, etc. Now it is much easier to mimic a particular voice, a particular phone conversation, and thereby extort money at the end of it. The article also highlights, and there have been multiple such media reports, isn't it, that you have a deep fake video generated. Now that could potentially alter the polling habits also, isn't it? Deep fake videos generated of celebrities, deep fake videos generated of people that you know at a personal level demanding you for some amount of money, and eventually you are basically a victim of a scam. So here the attacks, or basically phishing and ransomware attacks, have increased by around 1200%. As compared to the earlier times, these attacks in frequency has increased by more than 1200%. Not around more 1200 events, 1200%. So that gives you an idea about how prevalent this danger is. So phishing and ransomware, deep fakes. Okay. Now there is also a concern about that it can lead to elimination of low-skilled jobs, etc. But as of now, let us focus on this. Now this is something which has made our world much more vulnerable. For example, if an AI is put to a detrimental use, as the intelligence report by US indicated, that a particular enemy country can successfully put you at war with any other country if it uses AI in that way. It can generate and simulate attacks, right? So all your weapon systems will basically expect an attack, and you might be forced to retaliate very quickly, and it all might be fake, but once you retaliate, then a war can be ensued. So that is where world peace can also be at risk. Governments can be destabilized. Governments can be upthrown, right? Can be removed. Why and how? Mistrust can be very easily spread in the society now. So what this article tells us, that look, AI is changing the world, but accordingly we also need to have a change in our own mindset, and also how the world tackles this threat, that also needs to undergo a kind of a paradigm shift. So this is where last year a Bletchley Convention and the agreement was signed at, which was signed by countries such as Germany, France, all the countries of EU, India, and 27 other countries. They signed the Bletchley Park Agreement, which was held in UK in Bletchley Park. So that Bletchley Park, or the Bletchley Declaration as it is referred to, it was held in the last months of 2023. Now what does it talk about? So here we talk about the Bletchley Declaration. What is it? Arrived at Bletchley Park in UK in 2023. So this is, first of all, India, European Union, India is a member, and other 27 countries, including China, US, all of them. Now what is this? This is a declaration where the global leaders and the global leadership for the first time came upon a platform to understand the threat posed by AI, right? So that is more important, that everybody builds a consensus that yes, this is a threat. Once you identify that particular issue as a threat, only then can you work towards removing that threat or tackling that threat, isn't it? So it talks about identifying the threat. Identifying the threat. The threat of what? AI in general? No. The misuse of AI. Okay, not AI in general, but if there is a misuse of AI, that is when it can virtually turn disastrous. So this is one. Then, in this, as per this Bletchley Declaration, all the countries agreed that let us meet regularly, year after year, let us make this meeting an annual affair so that everybody shares this platform and everybody gets an opportunity to discuss about the new threats which have emerged or the existing threats which are there and accordingly take action, right? So, regular updation of the threats. Updation of threats. How? Annual meetings and assessments. They will be carried out. Now, when we say threats, we have discussed these threats, but these threats, they encompass various areas. Biotechnology, medicinal sciences also, it can be misutilized. So that is the overarching threat. So this is what the governments are doing, which is a commendable move in itself, that okay, you have reached a consensus, you are going to meet every year, thereby streamline your own governance measures, your own law and order procedure in order to tackle this emerging threat, which is a good thing. But what is it that we can do? What is it that public at large should do? While the governments will, in a way, eventually end up regulating the system as European Union is doing. The EU rule and the newly passed regulation for AI in EU is a kind of a benchmark which the world is trying to follow. But what about you and me? Eventually, on a day-to-day basis, it is you and me who will be impacted, right, by this random phishing attack, ransomware attack, etc. So what is the way forward in this? The way forward is one has to go for an increased awareness through public campaigns, through advertisements. So awareness level of the public has to be improved, right? So that is something you can encapsulate in the portion of way forward. That is awareness. Then what? You have increased the level of awareness, but that will take time. It is not as if a television program has got an advertisement about the warnings of AI, immediately everybody will be aware that look out for AI. No. That is where the role of NGOs come in. NGOs. They can go for dissemination of information and raising of awareness at the grassroots level. Particularly in countries like India, where we are slightly lacking in terms of developmental parameters, but in terms of digital parameter, we are very high. So that is where there's a gap. Right? People who are accessing the digital medium, many of the time they don't know the importance or the relevance of any particular data point. You will hear endless number of stories where just on a phone call, people have divulged all their card details, have divulged all the PIN codes, etc. and they have been scammed. So imagine AI in today's day. For example, let's suppose you have your mobile phone, you go for your facial recognition. In a way, you feel that you are protecting your privacy, that only your face can be read. But imagine an AI can actually end up getting that data of your facial recognition, use your facial recognition in order to access maybe your bank accounts, etc., etc. So that is where when the gap between literacy and the gap between digital availability is high, a greater care has to be taken. And a greater information sending has to be done, right? And for those, the NGOs, they come in. So this is what can be done. So what is it that we have studied in this article? The benefits, the drawbacks of AI, right? I'm sure you will be able to write that. What is the Bletchley Park Declaration, which was arrived at Bletchley Park in UK in 2023? That was for AI regulation, and also monitoring the threats posed by AI, ensuring that the countries meet on a regular basis in order to assess, monitor the threat, and accordingly take a responsive measure, and also what to do moving ahead when it comes to citizens and how to make citizens much more aware. Okay, Now we move on to the next article. The next article is reservation within constitutional bounds. Now, in this election season, a lot of muck is being thrown around, a lot of mudslinging is happening regarding the reservation, that this much amount of reservation should be there, more amount of reservation should be there, lesser amount of reservation should be there, reservation on the basis of caste should be there or not. So there is a lot of debate and discussion going around. Now, reservation as a concept is for what? What is the basic principle or what is the basic problem that reservation is trying to solve? All of us, we have read about and studied about reservation in various different terms, and we might have our own opinions about it, all of us, whether reservation is required, whether reservation is not required, and so on and so forth. Always it encounters or it invigorates a lively debate everywhere. But what is the purpose of reservation? The purpose is, as was put forward at the time of the Constituent Assembly debates as well, that there are certain sections of the society, certain classes of the society who have been traditionally poor, not in terms of economy, but in terms of they are educationally and socially backward classes, in terms of development, in terms of opportunity. There are many classes of society in our country who don't get equal opportunities. Let's suppose equal opportunity to study, equal opportunity in order to choose the career of their option, equal opportunity to simply say no, that I will not pursue this profession, I am interested in something else. Just because I'm born in a family doesn't mean I will have to carry out this profession. So, such classes of society, the concept or the logic was that those individuals who never had the opportunity to go to the school, and when they went to the school they were discriminated against. You cannot pitch them at the same level where an individual, let's suppose, has received top class education from their childhood days, has got his mind free and not suppressed by the society, so put them on the same platform. That was the basic principle behind providing reservation. Whether that has been successful or not is a debate for some other day. But that was the basic principle. Now, originally, this entire thing of providing reservation is referred to as an affirmative action. Affirmative action, where you basically try to put the backward classes at the same pedestal so that they can have equal opportunities. That is the affirmative action. So when you take a look at it, it is defined as a set of procedures designed to eliminate unlawful discrimination amongst applicants, remedy the results of such prior discrimination, and prevent this discrimination going ahead in the future. That is the affirmative action. Now in India, reservation is provided in terms of in certain educational backgrounds and in educational institutions, and also in public employment. Reservation is provided. So that is covered under Article 15 and Article 16. Article 15 and 16, while they talk about Article 15, for example, talks about the fact that the state shall not discriminate on the basis of caste, sex, race, etc. The state shall not discriminate, right? Article 16 talks about that when it comes to public employment, there should be no discrimination. So overall, Article 15 and 16, they talk about equality of opportunity. That every citizen should have an equality of opportunity. These articles are present only to the citizens. So equality of opportunity to all the citizens. However, there are sub-clauses within this article which talks about the fact that the portion mentioned or the subject mentioned in this article shall not prevent the government to take an affirmative action overall for women, upliftment of women, or for the upliftment of the socially and educationally and economically backward sections of the society. Economically backward was basically a utility and a connotation which was extracted to provide reservation to the economically weaker section. In the constitution itself, it is mentioned socially and educationally backward classes, the ignored classes. So that is the portion under which reservations have been provided. Reservations, as per the Indira Sawhney case in 1992, had been limited to 50%. Now, out of that 50% of reservation, again, if you go for the arithmetic, so as per the Indira Sawhney case, overall you will observe that Supreme Court had limited the reservation. In 1992, Supreme Court had limited the reservation to 50%. Now, this 50% included what? So, basically, OBCs, 27%, right? Then after that, you had SCs, 15%, STs, 7.5%. So overall, it would come out to be 49.5%. Supreme Court had opined that in order to maintain the equality of opportunity, let's keep the reservation capped at 50% unless and until there is a compelling need to extend it. Now, all the discussion which is going around in the political circles as of now is revolving around this OBC reservation. Now, in this OBC reservation, ideally the creamy layers are eliminated. Anyone having an annual income of more than 8 lakh, they don't get reservation. That is the elimination of the creamy layer. Any individual whose parents are, let's suppose, in group 1 or group A jobs, right? They don't get the children of those officers, they don't get reservation. If, let's suppose, both the parents are working either at group B level, their children will also not get reservation. So the concept of creamy layer does exist in OBC. Now, what is it that is making the headlines is the fact that there has been allegation that some members of or some sections of religious minority, they have also been provided reservation under this category. Now, Karnataka has been, as per this article, Karnataka has provided the reservation to the Muslim community within that OBC ambit since 1995. When the previous government, state government was there, it removed that sub-reservation on the basis of religion. Because the constitution also maintains that we will not provide reservation on the basis of religion. Because on the basis of religion, if you provide reservation, that basically can trigger a kind of religious polarization at an unprecedented level. But here one has to understand that when we talk about the OBCs, it doesn't talk about religion, isn't it? Other backward classes. So backward classes, it is religion, it is not religion centric. Backward classes can be of any particular religion there, isn't it? So why to restrict the OBC reservation within only one particular sect? That is the argument. The counter argument is that again it can lead to religious polarization. Right. For example, when it comes to SCs, the constitutional order for scheduled caste talks about only members of Hinduism, Sikhism, Buddhism, they will be accorded that status. But STs and OBCs, you don't have any such kind of requirement, any such kind of regulation. So that is why this OBC and this section getting 27% of the reservation, this is being eyed at. One political party is saying that we will increase it, we will take this number beyond 50. Other political parties saying that we will keep it as it is, we will eliminate the religious minorities here. So amongst all this political bickering, let us understand what is relevant for your examination here. First of all, the reservation on backwardness of backwardness. So remember how we started the conversation. The purpose of reservation was what? To ensure that those people who have basically been marginalized historically and traditionally, they also attain an equal footing, they also get an equal opportunity. Now various reports have indicated that despite this reservation now being provided for almost 3 decades and more now, still, even within the reserved category, there are only one particular or two particular groups who will dominate the posts which are released. The actual backward sections, they are not getting the required benefits. Right? So that is where reservation is not solving the purpose as for which it was designed. And reservation has to be basically independent of religion in that. You have to consider the Indian citizens. And it was that logic which was applicable to provide reservation under EWS, which was later on approved by the Supreme Court by majority judgment of 3:2. Right? But here, is reservation solving its purpose? The answer is no. So here, dominance, that is what the article tells us. Dominance of particular few classes in reserved seats means what? Exclusion of many. There has been exclusion of many of the people, many of the classes who don't reach that pedestal at all. Secondly, has to be religion agnostic. That is independent of religious beliefs. What has to be independent? Reservation? No. Measure of backwardness. How backward a particular class is. That has to be independent. Okay. Then, frequent analysis has to be done. The government had set up Rohini Commission, so various committees have been set up. But the reports are not being pursued in many of the cases because of a fear of a social upheaval which can happen. Right? A social mistrust which can be spread, anything. So that is why what needs to be done is basically analyze those subcategories within these classes, subcategories within the scheduled castes, subcategories within the scheduled tribes, subcategories within the OBC. Understand which is the demography which is getting the reservation, which is the demography which is not getting any benefit out of the reservation policy. Obviously, there will be a grievance and a sentiment which will build up. Right, that can eventually boil up in the form of any agitation somewhere. The society can be on the cusp of agitation and violence, which is never productive enough. Right? So, analysis and review of effectiveness. That how effective it has been, or whether it has been effective or not at all, that is what is required. So going ahead, whether one political party says something, another political party says another thing, reservation as a policy in itself, it needs to have its roots to the region where it is required, to the sections which are still marginalized on the fringes of the society. And when you measure that backwardness in the OBC, for example, in the constitutional order for scheduled caste, it is said that scheduled caste basically is going to be of these religions only. But when you talk about the scheduled tribes, when you talk about OBCs, you have depressed classes, poorer classes, socially and educationally backward classes, even in Christianity, even in the Muslim population. So they also should get the right. That is the argument or the logic which the article has presented. Okay? Now, ideally, from this article, what do you have to extract? Please do not start following this news story that BJP has said this, Congress has said this. No. Please continue to remain apolitical. Out of this, you have to extract what is affirmative action, what is it that basically Article 15 and 16 has done. You see, this kind of affirmative action is something which is not only present in India, but the concept of it exists in various parts of the world. For example, when it comes to UK, there you will find that the organizations, the companies are encouraged that, look, if you want to promote racial diversity and gender diversity within your workforce, you can take affirmative action. You can provide a preference to a particular race, a particular gender. In US also, earlier it used to be the case that there had to be an increased racial diversity to be represented in the universities. So the colleges would allow admission based upon the religious diversity. Minorities would get some amount of preference, But there was a case with Harvard where the education and the admission of the minorities was put to question. The Supreme Court of US, the federal court, basically quashed that order, saying that if we provide opportunities for free education, or rather admission, easy admission based upon race, that goes against the equality of opportunity. In France, they don't have any such norm for such affirmative action. So the world in itself is also evaluating this. We also, being the ideal members of the world and being a very diverse society, we also have to evaluate this, assess it, and then think about moving forward. Okay? Now, then moving to the fourth article, we need to stop the fear mongering on vaccines. Now, vaccines are very, very important when it comes to saving lives. India has been the success story of many of the vaccines. For example, India is a success story when it comes to elimination of polio. All of you in your childhood days would have heard about the various advertisements. Do boon zindagi ke is a terminology which would have struck a chord. Everywhere around you, you would have heard about polio vaccines. And India managed to successfully eliminate polio while our neighbors are still struggling to do that. So vaccines have always been very, very helpful. When the COVID pandemic struck, the immediate fear was that this can wipe a substantial portion of the world population. At that point of time, the vaccines which were available were in significantly greater demand overall. The vaccines which were available, they were in very great demand, significantly greater demand. Now, you had the Covishield. In India, you had two vaccines available, Covishield and Covaxin. One by AstraZeneca and Serum Institute, that is Covishield, and the other by Bharat Biotech, that was Covaxin. Now, recent studies have indicated that those individuals who had been administered a dose of Covishield, they are prone to certain side effects, what is referred to as basically TTS, if you consider that, thrombosis and thrombocytopenia syndrome, or in simple terms, those individuals can have a side effect of heart stroke and cardiovascular diseases, and some other complications can happen. So that has been played up. That has magnified in terms of the proportion of news. That, okay, you have taken Covishield, now God will take care of you, isn't it? So that is something which has been played up. This article basically argues that, look, this is an unnecessary debate which is going on. This will unnecessarily fuel those who promote vaccine hesitancy. You have this a real threat, vaccine hesitancy. What do we mean by that? Vaccine hesitancy basically talks about the reluctance that people have in getting administered a dose for a particular vaccine because they are afraid that this or other side effect might be there. Right? While you can go to the counter, buy a pill, pop up a pill very easily, that pill might be an antibiotic, but you would trust the compounder sitting at the counter, but you would not trust the vaccine. But that is what the reality of the world in which we live in. Now here, the article argues that, look, even this TTS, the thrombocytis, even this particular syndrome is very, very less, and that too, the data is not available for the Indian patients. The study has been carried out on patients from abroad, because each and every human body reacts with a particular drug, reacts with a particular input in a very different manner. So that is where it talks about the fact that the frequency is very low. Frequency of side effect. Frequency of side effect is very low. It is 2 to 3 per lakh of population. They can get the side effect. Now, actually, what has triggered the fear mongering is the fact that for the past couple of years, you would also have observed that increased instances of younger people suffering from cardiac arrest, from brain strokes, etc., that has increased in frequency. So many people are linking those events to Covishield. But the reality of the matter is, ever since COVID-19 emerged as a threat, immediately people started observing, the scientists and the doctors, the physicists, they started observing that this virus, even after, let's suppose you have been healed, this virus can leave certain issues within the body which can impact you in the long run. That is why you had the cases of people who had even recovered from COVID, but eventually succumbing to organ failure, cardiovascular issues, etc. So the article argues that, look, ever since this COVID pandemic broke out, there has been a stress on the heart tissues, there has been a stress on the cardiovascular systems, so these issues are already on the rise. We are simply merging the two different issues, one of vaccine side effect and one of the impact of COVID. We are merging it and thinking about the ill effects. At that point of time, if you think about the second wave of COVID, if you recall those harsh times, you would recall that how these vaccines basically were a provider of life. It saved countless number of lives. The speed at which we were able to administer those vaccines could save lakhs of life significantly. Now this rate of side effect, this might turn out to be, it appeared to be that, okay, 2 or 3 people every lakh of population is significant number. But think about it, in the case of road accidents, every year we lose around 10 people per lakh of population. In terms of rail accidents, we end up losing significantly on a daily basis around 8 to 9 people in suburban railways itself. So when you compare it to that, it is like comparing apples and oranges, but still that number turns out to be smaller. That is what the article also argues. Now here, the larger issue is that this particular uncertainty is being used by the vaccine hesitancy groups in order to advise people not to go for vaccine administration, and that too on a study which has not been carried out on the Indian population. So what is it that going ahead one has to keep in mind in order to ensure that such kind of miscommunication, misinformation, doubts, they do not prevail. So that is where the way forward, if you have to think about. So here, one thing has to be gathering of more data. We are woefully short of data. When it comes to Indian people and Indian citizens, what is the requirement of the body, what is the requirement based on the gender, that is something where the research has not been carried out. Now, Covishield has been administered to us in the larger section of the population for almost now 3 years. High time that a research by maybe a private firm or by the government-backed research should have been carried out, that what are the impacts, what is the survey result. But that is not carried out. So need for data at a domestic level. That is very much required. Okay? Then after that, one needs to devise medicines, vaccines based upon the requirement and the morphology of its own population, right? So population-centric research needs to be carried out. Then you can have a significant advancement and advantage in terms of the vaccines that you bring out. Population-centric research. Then greater awareness amongst the population that what is the medicine that they are taking, what the disease can do, and what the medicine can do. Greater awareness amongst masses. And more importantly, greater awareness amongst medical practitioners. That is also very, very important. So if we follow this going ahead, we can basically be in a situation where we can tackle these emergency scenarios, these diseases which keep on emerging. But the easy thing to do would be to go back to the vaccine hesitancy, that we don't trust the vaccine, we don't take the vaccine, we will go to the counter, whatever that compounder, whether he has studied or not, whatever that compounder will suggest to us, we will consume that pill, we will be fine. Even though we might die 10 years earlier, but we are fine. So that vaccine hesitancy, particularly in the low-income countries, is very high. Because they don't trust the system, the trust level in the government, the administration is already very low, and then the lack of awareness further exaggerates the issue. So we have to fight that vaccine hesitancy. Otherwise, we will be in the same fate as the neighboring countries such as Pakistan, Afghanistan, etc., who are still unable to emerge from the scourge of polio. So that is what this article is about. Now coming to certain articles relevant for your prelims. So here, Interpol issued a blue corner notice against Prajwal Ravana. Now Prajwal Ravana, a sitting lawmaker, a sitting legislator from Karnataka, has been in news because of various issues and leaked videos, etc. Now, before his appearance, he escaped to Germany. He moved to Munich in Germany. Now, Interpol has issued a blue corner notice. Earlier, whenever you would have heard about Interpol, they would have issued red corner notices against some individuals. So what is this blue corner notice? What is this red notice? Only that is relevant for your examination, not what Prajwal Ravana is doing or where he is going, when he is going to come back, etc., not important for the exam. So here, when we talk about blue corner notice, okay, that is basically for inquiry. Inquiry into what? Inquiry into that individual, what is their background, has there been a criminal history or not, has there been a criminal past or not. So inquiry for that is conducted. Then a blue corner notice is a blue corner notice is issued. So for this individual, you had the blue corner notice which has been issued. When it comes to red corner notice, that is when it is an established fugitive that you have to arrest, you have to find out, and you have to, in many of the cases, initiate the proceedings of extradition. Okay, blue corner is not for arrest, not for extradition. Red corner is for that. So Interpol, which is like a global policing service if you think about it, it basically instigates or cooperates rather with the local police and the local administration, and they take the required and suitable action thereby. Okay, so that is the blue corner and the red corner notice, only that is important for the exam. Then Padma awards have been awarded for people coming from various areas, from various fields. You have actors, for example, Tamil actor Vijaykanth, then actor Vijayanti Mala and Chiranjeevi. They have been awarded with the Padma Awards. Then Fatima Bibi, the first woman judge of the Supreme Court, has also been given the award. So basically, you have Vijayanti Mala and Chiranjeevi, they were given Padma Vibhushan, whereas everyone else, including Vijaykanth, including O. Rajagopal, Kundan Vyas, who is a journalist, then including Fatima Bibi, all of them were actually given Padma Bhushan. Okay, this can be important for your MCQs based upon Padma Bhushan and Padma Vibhushan. Okay, so these are the Padma Awards. Why are they given? They are given to individuals who excel in their own areas of culture, sports, etc., or who indicate a kind of a preeminent citizenry traits. That is where Padma Awards are given. Now, China's aircraft carrier Fujian completes 8-day sea trial. Now, this is the third aircraft carrier that China has launched. And this is a super carrier. That is, it has got a displacement of 80,000 tons. That is the displacement. Right? It means very large. Just to put it to context, the aircraft carriers that we have, they have a displacement amount of 40 to 44,000. So think about it. China had basically commissioned its first aircraft carrier, Liaoning, at the same time when we commissioned our first aircraft carrier. That was from Russia. We took its aircraft carrier, older aircraft carrier, Admiral Gorshkov, and we converted it into Vikramaditya. So Liaoning and Vikramaditya were commissioned almost at the same time, right, around 2012. Then India embarked on a mission to construct its second aircraft carrier, that was INS Vikrant. Vikrant has moved to the sea trials and is close to being completely functional within a short span of time. Meanwhile, in 2017, China put forward its second aircraft carrier, that was Shandong. And while India on the other hand, so Shandong is already operational now, while India on the other hand is still thinking about whether we should go for a third aircraft carrier or not only has China launched its third aircraft carrier, it has already last month announced that we are going to go for the fourth aircraft carrier, building the fourth aircraft carrier as well. This tells you the seriousness and the efficiency with which the People's Liberation Army and the PLA Navy is actually operating. Now, this aircraft carrier is also vital because it utilizes electromagnetic catapult launching. Now, generally in aircraft carrier, what you observe is that you have a short deck, especially Vikrant, Vikramaditya you would have seen, and the aircrafts use this in order to take flight. Right. At the time of landing, there is a kind of a wire barrier, a metal wire, with which the hook of the aircraft gets attached and it comes to a sharp halt. Right. That is what is referred to as the stow-bar technology. That is stow-bar. What does that mean? Short takeoff. That is what India has. That is what China also in the case of Liaoning and Shandong had. Short takeoff, barrier assisted recovery. Okay. Now what is the problem with this? Ideally, the problem with this is that, look, the takeoff distance is going to be very short. So you can never think of launching a heavy aircraft. You can never think of launching an aircraft fully armed to its teeth. Bigger aircraft you can never launch. For example, the AVAC system, which provides you an overarching defense, you can never launch from these aircraft carriers. That is a limitation. Now, what US has been doing, and that is something which China has also managed to done. So China is the second country after US which has now managed electromagnetic catapult launch system, what is also known as EMALS. Okay, electromagnetic launch system. Now here you have a kind of a catapult. Right, this catapult attaches to the aircraft and the catapult moves with such a high speed, it provides that speed to the aircraft and the aircraft can gain larger velocity, takeoff velocity, larger aircrafts can fly, more aircrafts can fly more frequently, and also that will increase the efficiency, the weapon carrying ability as well. That is where this aircraft carrier is different, and also because of the fact that it can house almost twice the number of planes, fixed blades, as well as the helicopters, twice the number as anything that India can have. This is also a learning for India. Right now, we are still pondering about the fact that we need a third aircraft carrier or not. This has moved, and eventually you had the Defense Procurement Committee talking about it. Now, Defense Acquisition Council has to pass it. Then eventually RFP will be issued. It is a time span of 8 to 10 years. And that too in optimistic term, knowing how our defense system operates, 8 to 10 years will be taken for us to produce a third aircraft carrier. And in the time, China will be almost on the verge of having 5 to 6 aircraft carriers. That is where we need to take the technology, at least, if not in pure numerological strength, the technological advantage that China has gained. We need to basically counter that. We need to come close to that. Okay? Now, the last article. Could bird flu turn into next pandemic? Bird flu or avian flu, which is also H5N1. Now, for the past few years, it has been spreading quite significantly, but what has alarmed the researchers is the fact that now you have this flu even spreading to cows and milch animals. There have been instances where cows or animal to human transmission has also been found. Right, but human to human transmission till now has not been established, but animal to human transmission has been found. And do you know what? Mortality rate in the case of humans is much higher as compared to what it was in the time of the COVID. Right, the data in itself indicates that 889 human cases have happened till now. As per WHO, out of 889 cases, 463 casualties have occurred. So mortality rate of 52%. In the case of COVID, it was in single digit, low single digit. So you can imagine how dangerous it can be. As of now, it is something which the cows in US, they have got. So cows, basically that in itself is an alarming case, because cows, their number is so high. Their animal to animal transmission can happen. Their number is so high and they mingle with the population so easily. It will be very difficult to separate the spread or prevent the spread of virus. And if it happens to occur in developing countries like India, that is when we need to tackle it very seriously. So what needs to be done? We need to ensure that proper separation of these cases is done, isolation of the cases is done, increased testing in animal samples are done. Right, randomized samples should be taken from various areas and sample testing should be done, because you never know in that area or in that particular state the milch animals or the bovine cattle might have that disease load. Okay, now coming to the practice questions. So the first question, what is meant by affirmative action? Discuss the pros and the cons in the Indian context. So this is a 10-marker question. This can be asked in your GS paper 2. How do you answer this? How do you write an answer for this? So introduction. Here it is very simple what will be covered in introduction, because here the subject question is directly there, affirmative action. What is there in affirmative action? So the definition that we talked about. So the socially disadvantaged classes of society, they are provided an opportunity in order to have an opportunity to utilize their potential, etc., regardless of the sex, creed, etc. That is the affirmative action. The definition you simply write, that will be your introduction. In Indian context, affirmative action is provided under the aegis of Article 15 and Article 16 of the Constitution in order to provide the upliftment of the women section or the women of society, and also the socially and educationally backward classes of the society. So when you start the body, in the first 3 to 4 sentences, provide the context of affirmative action in India. Right. So there, once you have done that, talk about the pros and the cons. In the cons, please don't talk about your own polarizing thought, if at all it is there. In the cons, here you have to talk about that many sections, marginalized sections, the benefits have still not reached there. They are still getting excluded. The execution or the implementation at the grassroots level is still not there. In the pros, many people have been freed of that vicious cycle of born in a particular caste and following a particular profession. Many of them have got an access to education. Like that, you can talk about the pros and the cons. But what will be more important is what you write after that. Despite the various challenges which emerge from time to time, this affirmative action in a socially diverse country like India is very much needed in order to put various, or in order to provide equality of opportunity in the truest terms. What, however, can be concentrated upon is analysis of the subclasses within these and understanding the demographic detail to see whether the benefit is reaching the ground level or not. These nicks and corners, if they are taken care of, the day is not far when affirmative action would no longer be needed in any context. That is how you can summarize the answer. What is vaccine hesitancy? Discuss the measures to mitigate the issue. So what is the issue of vaccine hesitancy? Basically the lack of trust that people have. They don't trust the vaccines, and they basically are worried about the side effect, which generally prevails when the awareness level is low, misinformation is very high. So how do you get rid of that? You basically provide with information, greater research, greater data pointers, awareness amongst people, awareness amongst medical practitioners, involvement of ASHA workers in Indian case, and also the government machinery at the grassroots level should disseminate more information. Like that, you can basically write the answer. Okay, so this is where we mark the end of the discussion for today. Do write these answers on your own. Try to write at least one of these answers so that you get into the writing habit. If you have liked the video, please do not forget to click on the like, share, and the subscribe button. We meet again tomorrow. Till then, take care of yourself. Goodbye and thank you.